The chamber was silent when Dayon entered. He had been to Nexus Prime many times before, but never had the air felt this heavy. The crystalline walls of the council chamber stretched upward into darkness, and floating within environmental bubbles were the representatives of 14 alien species. Each one watched him with eyes that seemed to glow with ancient knowledge. Dayon walked to the center of the floor. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. He wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, dark blue with silver trim. His hair was starting to gray at the temples, and the lines around his eyes spoke of many difficult negotiations. But nothing had prepared him for this. Supreme Arbiter Velthris materialized before him. The being was pure energy contained in a humanoid shape, constantly shifting between colors that had no names in human language. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Dayon's mind. Ambassador Dayon of Earth, the Dominion Council has reached a decision regarding humanity. Dayon kept his face neutral. I am listening, Supreme Arbiter. For 300 years, we have watched your species expand across the stars. We have observed your methods, your resource consumption, your militarization, your refusal to accept our guidance. Velthris paused, and the other council members stirred in their bubbles. The council has concluded that humanity represents a threat to galactic stability. The words hung in the air like poison. Dayon felt his heart rate increase, but he forced himself to remain calm. A threat? We have violated no treaties. We have attacked no one. You exist as a threat simply by your nature, Velthris replied. Therefore, the council offers humanity a choice. You will dismantle all military infrastructure within 20 standard cycles. You will place yourselves under Dominion oversight. You will accept our technology, our guidance, our protection. This is the path to peace. And if we refuse, Dayon asked, though he already knew the answer, then the Dominion will have no choice but to eliminate the threat you represent. The energy being pulsed brighter. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador. This is a mercy. We give you the chance to survive under our care. Consider carefully. The meeting ended. Dayon was escorted back to his ship by silent guards who looked like walking crystals. His hands shook as he activated the communication system to contact Earth. 20 cycles. That gave them less than 2 months to decide the fate of humanity. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Dayon spent every moment reviewing the meeting, analyzing every word, searching for any room to negotiate. He found none. The Dominion had made their decision. Humanity would kneel, or humanity would die, when his ship entered orbit around Earth. Dayon looked down at the blue and white planet below. 30 billion people lived there. Another 20 billion were scattered across the 32 colony worlds. All of them depended on what happened next. The United Earth Council assembled within hours of his arrival. The council chamber in Geneva was packed. Prime Minister Taijin called the meeting to order, his face grave. Dayon stood at the podium and delivered the Dominion's ultimatum. The room erupted. This is insane, shouted Councilmember Soman from the Mars delegation. We've done nothing wrong. They're afraid of us, said Admiral Minho, commander of the Colonial Defense Force. He was a big man with a scarred face and cold eyes. They see what we're capable of, and it scares them. Can we fight them? Asked Taijin. Be honest, Admiral. Minho's laugh was bitter. Fight them. Prime Minister, the Dominion has 14 species. They control thousands of worlds. They have weapons that can destroy stars. Our entire fleet wouldn't last 10 minutes in a direct confrontation. Then we have no choice, Taijin said quietly. We must accept their terms. No. The voice came from the back of the chamber. Dayon's sister, Hijin, stood up. She wore the uniform of an Earth Defense Fleet captain, and her eyes blazed with anger. I've studied every species that accepted Dominion protection. Within 3 generations, none of them exist anymore. Not really. Their cultures are gone. Their languages are forgotten. They become something else, something that serves the Dominion. At least they survive, Taijin argued. Do they? Hijin stepped forward. Is that survival? Becoming slaves who don't even remember they're slaves. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Some shouted for acceptance. Others demanded resistance. Daeon watched his sister face down the Prime Minister and felt pride mixed with fear. She was right, but she was also proposing collective suicide. Minho called for attention. I have intelligence to share. He activated a holographic display. 6 years ago, the Dominion gave the same ultimatum to a species called the Velen. They accepted. This is what happened. The hologram showed a beautiful world of purple oceans and golden cities. Then it showed the same world 50 years later. The cities were rebuilt in a different style. The Velen themselves looked different, moved differently, spoke differently. They smiled when Dominion overseers gave orders. They're still alive, someone said. Are they? Minho zoomed in on a Velen's face. The eyes were empty. This is not survival. This is extinction with extra steps. The debate raged for 6 hours. Finally, Taijin called for order. We must vote. Accept the Dominion terms and hope for survival, or reject them and face certain destruction. There's a third option, Daeon said. Everyone turned to look at him. We reject the terms and fight. Not to win, because we can't. But to make them remember that humanity existed. To go down fighting rather than fading away into nothing. That's insane, Taijin said. Maybe, Daeon replied. But is it more insane than choosing slow death over fast death? The vote was called. It was done in secret, each council member entering their choice privately. Daeon voted to reject the ultimatum, knowing it might doom them all. When the results came in, the room was silent. 40-9 votes to accept. 50 votes to reject. By a single vote, humanity chose defiance. Taijin stood, his face pale. Then it's decided. Ambassador Daeun, you will return to Nexus Prime and deliver our response. 3 days later, Daeun stood once more before the Dominion Council. Velthris appeared before him, confident and serene. Have you brought wisdom from your world, Ambassador? Daeon took a deep breath. He thought of Earth below, of his sister and her ship, of billions of people who had no idea their fate had just been sealed. Then he spoke the words that would change everything. The people of Earth have considered your offer. We reject it. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not accept your oversight. We will not kneel. The chamber erupted in surprised sounds from the alien council members. Velthris' energy form pulsed with what might have been shock or anger. You understand what this means? We do, Daeun said. His voice was steady now. We would rather die free than live as slaves. This is humanity's answer. We will not kneel. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Dominion Accord had been refused. And in that moment, everything changed. 3 cycles passed in tense silence. Then the Dominion ships appeared. They came to New Jeju first, a colony world at the edge of human space. Governor Sunwoo watched from his office as 40 massive vessels materialized in orbit above his planet. Each ship was the size of a city, their hulls gleaming with technology humanity couldn't begin to understand. Sunwoo activated the emergency broadcast. All citizens, this is not a drill. Dominion forces are in orbit. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. 20 million people lived on New Jeju. The planet had been terraformed over 70 years, turned from a barren rock into a world with blue skies and green forests. Children had been born there. People had built homes, lives, futures. Now, those futures were ending. The Dominion didn't bother with threats or warnings. They simply deployed a device toward the system's star. Within minutes, the star's output began to increase. Temperatures on New Jeju started to rise. The message was clear. The planet had hours, not days. Hajin's fleet received the distress signal while patrolling 3 systems away. She looked at the tactical display and felt ice fill her veins. Even at maximum speed, they were 48 hours away. The planet would be uninhabitable in 60 hours. All ships, emergency jump, she ordered. We're going to New Jeju. Her tactical officer Hannah spoke quietly. Captain, even if we get there in time, we don't have enough transport capacity for 20 million people. I know, Haijin said. But we save everyone we can. The journey was a nightmare of waiting. Haijin walked through the ship, trying to stay calm, trying not to think about what was happening. Her crew worked frantically, converting every available space into refugee quarters. Cargo bays were emptied. Life support systems were pushed to maximum capacity. They arrived at chaos. New Jeju's sun was visible from space now, brighter and angrier than it should be. The planet's oceans were starting to boil, and everywhere, ships were launching. Personal vessels, cargo haulers, anything that could fly was packed with people trying to escape. "Get me Governor Sunwoo," Haijin ordered. The governor's face appeared on screen. He looked exhausted. Behind him, Haijin could see people running, carrying children, dragging bags of possessions. "Captain, thank God. How many can you take?" "My fleet can carry maybe 12 million if we pack them in." "What's your status?" "We're loading everyone we can onto every ship we have. But we're not going to make it. At least 8 million people won't have transport when the planet becomes uninhabitable." Sunwoo's voice cracked. "I'm staying to coordinate evacuation until the end. Governor, my daughter Borum is on one of the evacuation ships. Make sure she makes it out." "That's an order, Captain." The evacuation was the worst thing Haijin had ever witnessed. Ships designed for hundreds carried thousands. Life support systems screamed warnings as oxygen levels dropped. Parents pushed their children onto transports, knowing they wouldn't have room to follow. Old people gave up their seats to young ones. A civilian scientist named Jiwon boarded Hijin's ship with the last group. She carried nothing but a data tablet. "Captain, I need access to your sensor logs. I was studying the star when the Dominion activated their weapon." Later, Haijin said, "Right now, we evacuate." "No, you don't understand. I found something. Something important." But there was no time. The star's output was increasing exponentially. The order came to withdraw. Ships that weren't fully loaded had to leave. Anyway, or be caught in the blast. Haijin stood on the bridge and watched New Jeju die. The star flared, and the planet's atmosphere simply burned away. 20 million people had lived there that morning. 12 million escaped. 8 million died, including Governor Sunwoo, who stayed at his post to the very end. The Dominion broadcast the destruction across all human channels. The message was simple. This is what happens when you resist. But they made a mistake. They thought the images of a burning world would break humanity's will. Instead, it lit a fire in their hearts that would never go out. Admiral Minho watched the broadcast from his command ship. His face was like stone. When it ended, he turned to his officers. "Find me the location of every Dominion installation within 10 jumps of human space." "Sir, we're not authorized. I don't care about authorization. They just killed 8 million civilians as a demonstration. I'm going to demonstrate something right back." 3 days later, Minho's fleet struck a Dominion listening post. The aliens never expected the attack. They had watched humanity for 300 years and thought they understood them. Humans used predictable tactics. They followed rules of war. They telegraphed their movements. Minho did none of those things. His ships came in dark, running silent, using debris fields as cover. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't demand surrender. They just attacked with everything they had. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Dominion station was destroyed. Every ship, every installation, every piece of equipment was reduced to floating wreckage. Minho broadcast one message on all Dominion frequencies. For New Jeju, then he jumped his fleet away before reinforcements could arrive. The victory felt good for exactly 6 hours. Then the Dominion responded. They declared humanity a rabid species that must be exterminated, not subjugated. 7 enforcement fleets were redirected toward human space. Each fleet contained enough firepower to destroy all. Of humanity's colonies combined, Daeyun watched the announcement from Earth. Taejun stood beside him. Looking 10 years older than he had a week ago, "We're going to die," the Prime Minister said quietly. "Every human in the galaxy is going to die because we were too proud to kneel." Maybe Daeyeon said, "But we'll die as humans, not as slaves." That's when Giwon appeared. The scientist had been working non-stop since escaping New Jeju. She looked exhausted but excited. "I found something," she said, pulling up data on a holographic display. "The Dominion's Starkiller weapon leaves a quantum signature. I can trace it." "So?" Taijin asked. "So I traced it back through the historical records. The Dominion has used this weapon 73 times in the last 2,000 years. Giwan's hands shook as she pulled up more data. They used it on species that were under protective custody. Species that rebelled after accepting Dominion terms. The room went silent. "They were always going to kill us," Dayan said. "Kneel now or resist later." The result was the same. Yes. Guan showed images of dead worlds, burned civilizations, extinct species. Every one of these accepted Dominion protection. Everyone tried to resist eventually. Every one was destroyed. The choice was never peace or war. It was quick death or slow death. Taijin sat down heavily. "Then we made the right choice. Made the only choice," Haijin said. She had come to Earth for the emergency meeting. "At least this way, we fight. At least this way, we make them remember that humanity existed." That night, Taijin addressed all of humanity. His speech was broadcast to every colony, every ship, every station. He told them the truth about what Jiwan had discovered. He told them about the Dominion's lies, about the species that had been destroyed, about the trap that had been set. "They offered us peace," Taijin said. "But it was never real peace. It was a slow execution dressed up as protection. So we chose to fight. We chose to die on our feet rather than live on our knees. In the weeks ahead, many of us will die. But we will die as humans. We will die free. And maybe, just maybe, our defiance will inspire others to resist. Maybe the Dominion will finally face the consequences of their lies." He paused, looking into the camera with tired but determined eyes. "We are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. And if we must die, we will make sure the galaxy never forgets we existed." The broadcast ended. Across 32 worlds and hundreds of stations, 50 billion humans prepared for war. They had no illusions about victory, but they had something else. They had dignity. They had defiance. They had each other, and they had nothing left to lose. For weeks after New Jeju burned, Earth's moon looked like a fortress. Every crater had been converted into a weapons platform. Every valley held missile silos. The entire surface bristled with railguns, plasma cannons, and shield generators. If the Dominion wanted Earth, they would have to fight for every meter, but Admiral Minho had no intention of letting them reach. Earth's fleet operated in the dark spaces between stars, hitting Dominion supply convoys and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. He refused to fight the way the Dominion expected. There would be no grand fleet battles, no honorable confrontations. This was survival, and survival had no room for honor. Haijin commanded one of the hunter groups. Her ship, the Indomitable, had been stripped down and rebuilt for speed. Heavy armor was removed. Non-essential systems were scrapped. What remained was fast, deadly, and expendable. Contact Hannah called from Tactical. "Dominion supply convoy, 6 ships, heading for Sector 7. "Battle stations," Haijin ordered. "Deploy the mines." Humanity had learned to be creative. Their mines didn't look like mines. They looked like asteroids, like space debris, like the random junk that floated between stars. The Dominion sensors were sophisticated, but they were designed to detect threats, not garbage. The convoy passed through the minefield without concern. Then the mines activated. Explosions rippled through the formation. 3 Dominion ships were destroyed instantly. The others scattered, trying to escape. But Haijin's fleet was waiting. They came in fast, targeting engines and weapons, crippling rather than destroying. A dead ship was just wreckage. A disabled ship was a rescue mission that tied up Dominion resources. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it was over, 6 Dominion ships were drifting, powerless, their crews sending distress signals that would take hours to answer. "Jump us out," Haijin ordered. "Next target." This was how humanity fought now. Quick strikes, ambushes, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. Minho had named it Protocol Chaos, and it was driving the Dominion insane. But there was a darker side to the war. A side that Dayan struggled with. Commander Yuna led Special Operations Group Wraith. Her teams operated deep in Dominion space, conducting missions that regular military forces couldn't, or wouldn't. "We need to hit their civilian infrastructure," Minho had told the War Council. "Cut their supply lines. Make them afraid." "You're talking about targeting civilians?" Dayan said. "I'm talking about survival." Minho's voice was cold. "The Dominion doesn't have civilians the way we understand them. Every citizen supports the war machine. Every station produces war materials. If we limit ourselves to military targets, we'll lose. There has to be another way. Show me one." Minho leaned forward. "We're outnumbered 10,000 to 1. We have no technological advantage. Our only edge is that we're willing to do what they don't expect. So yes, we hit their stations. We sabotage their infrastructure. We make them understand that conquering humanity comes with a price." Dayon had no answer to that. The logic was brutal, but undeniable. Yuna's team infiltrated a Dominion fortress world using stolen credentials and disguised ships. The security was tight, but humans had learned to be patient. They spent 3 weeks establishing cover identities, mapping patrol routes, and identifying targets. Then they struck. Not at military installations, but at the Central Archive Complex. While Dominion forces scrambled to respond, Yuna's team broke into the deepest vaults. What they found changed everything. "You need to see this," Yuna transmitted to Minho. "The Dominion's entire history is a lie. The archives told a story the galaxy had never heard. 12,000 years ago, the Dominion had been a minor species. They discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization called the Predecessors. Instead of studying the ruins, they stole the technology. Instead of learning, they took. But the Predecessors' technology came with knowledge. Knowledge of other ancient species that had been erased from history. The Dominion hadn't created galactic peace. They had enforced galactic stagnation. Any species that showed potential was offered protection. If they refused, they were destroyed. If they accepted, they were slowly absorbed, their innovations stolen, their culture erased. Their people turned into servants who didn't even remember what they had been. It had happened dozens of times. The pattern was always the same. Offer peace. Integrate the species. Harvest their knowledge. Eliminate any who remembered the truth. "They're not peacekeepers," Yuna said, her voice shaking. "They're parasites. They've been doing this for thousands of years." The data was transmitted to Earth. Giwan analyzed it and found more horrors. The Dominion's advanced weapons. They're faster than light drives. Their biological technology, none of it was theirs. All of it had been stolen from species that no longer existed. Meanwhile, Seojin worked in cyber warfare. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke, but his fingers could make computer systems dance. He had been probing Dominion networks for weeks, looking for weaknesses. He found one. The Dominion's military coordination relied on a quantum communication network. It was supposed to be unhackable. Seojin proved them wrong. He didn't try to break the encryption. Instead, he introduced subtle errors into the system. Fleet coordinates that were off by a few degrees, supply manifests that listed wrong quantities, patrol schedules that overlapped in impossible ways. The errors were small. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they created chaos. 3 Dominion enforcement fleets arrived at the same rendezvous point simultaneously, each thinking they were alone. The confusion took hours to sort out. Ships collided. Communication channels became jammed. By the time they restored order, Hyjin's hunter groups had hit 6 different supply depots, but the Dominion learned. They adapted. And they responded with ruthless efficiency. Dayon was in Geneva when the broadcast came through. The Dominion had captured 5 million human prisoners from overrun colonies. They executed them all. Live on every communication channel in the galaxy. This is the price of resistance, the broadcast announced. For every attack on Dominion forces, prisoners will be executed. For every act of sabotage, civilians will die. Surrender now, or watch your species be erased person by person. The images were horrific. Dayon watched thousands die and felt something break inside him. These weren't soldiers. They were children, elders, families, people who had already lost their homes, now losing their lives. Taijin looked like he wanted to vomit. We have to stop. We can't let more die. They were going to die anyway, Minho said. His voice was hard. The Dominion was always going to kill them. Now at least their deaths serve a purpose. They show the galaxy what the Dominion really is. They're people, not propaganda. They're martyrs, Minho replied. And martyrs inspire. Every species watching this broadcast is seeing the truth. The Dominion doesn't offer peace. They offer extinction. Dayon wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Minho was right. The executions were monstrous, but they revealed the monster. Across the galaxy, subject species were watching. Some of them were starting to whisper about resistance. Hyjin received new orders 3 days later. Earth and the core colonies were being evacuated. Not surrendered, evacuated. The civilian population was being moved to hidden stations in uncharted space. The worlds would be left behind, rigged with traps and weapons, turned into killing grounds. The Dominion thinks they're hunting us, Minho explained at the final briefing. They think if they conquer our worlds, they win. But we're not fighting for territory. We're fighting for survival. And to survive, we have to disappear. Where do we go? Hyjin asked. Into the dark, Minho replied. Into places the Dominion has never mapped. We become ghosts. We hit them when they don't expect it. We make them afraid to travel their own space. We turn their empire into a prison where they're the prisoners. It was insane. It was desperate. It was their only chance. The evacuation took 2 months. 50 billion people were moved to scattered habitats in deep space. Earth was left behind, its cities empty, but its defenses very much active. The Dominion would find a fortress world that looked abandoned, but was really one giant trap. Hyjin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched Earth shrink in the view screen. She had been born there. She might never see it again. But she would die before she let the Dominion have it intact. Set course for Sector 13, she ordered. We have a convoy to ambush. The ship jumped into the darkness. Behind them, humanity's worlds lay empty and waiting. Ahead, the Dominion thought they were winning. They were wrong. The real war was just beginning. And humanity was going to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget, never underestimate. Species with nothing left to lose. 2 years passed. The Dominion controlled all former human territory, but it was a victory that tasted like poison. On Earth, occupation forces patrolled empty streets. Dominion troops searched abandoned buildings, finding nothing but traps. Entire city blocks would explode when entered. Defense systems activated randomly, killing soldiers who thought the area was secure. The planet was conquered but unusable. Borum had been 15 when New Jeju burned. Now she was 17 and commanded a resistance cell of 40 fighters. Her father had died coordinating evacuations. She would not waste his sacrifice. The patrol comes through this street every 3 days, she explained, marking positions on a holographic map. They always use the same route. That's their mistake. Her team consisted of former soldiers, civilians, even children. The Dominion had given them 2 choices: die fighting or die slowly in processing camps. Most chose to fight. The ambush was simple. Wait until the patrol entered the kill zone, then detonate the explosives hidden in the building foundations. The blast killed 12 Dominion soldiers. Borum's team was gone before reinforcements arrived. This happened every day across every occupied world. The Dominion couldn't stop it. They couldn't even predict it. Humans would strike anywhere, anytime, using anything. Kitchen chemicals became explosives. Farming equipment became weapons. Children carried messages that would get adults killed. Jiho had been a teacher before the war. Now he taught people how to make bombs from household items. He was 40 years old, balding, and looked like someone who should be grading papers, not assembling detonators. The key is patience, he explained to new recruits. Don't rush. A bomb that goes off too early helps nobody. A bomb that goes off at exactly the right moment changes everything. His bombs had killed hundreds of Dominion troops. The aliens put a bounty on his head. Jiho considered it a compliment, but the real war was happening in places the Dominion couldn't see, far beyond charted space. In a system that appeared on no maps, humanity was building a fleet. Admiral Minho oversaw the construction personally. Salvaged Dominion technology was being reverse-engineered. Predecessor designs recovered from the archives were being brought to life. The ships didn't look like anything humanity had built before. They were smaller than traditional warships, but carried weapons that could punch through Dominion shields. They could jump directly into combat without the long approach times Dominion tactics required. They were built for speed, surprise, and overwhelming violence. How many can we build? Haijin asked, walking through the construction yards. If we push production to maximum, maybe 200 ships in the next 6 months, Minho replied. Not enough to challenge their fleets directly, but enough to make them bleed. And the plan? Minho pulled up a star chart. We hit them everywhere at once. Force them to spread their forces thin. Then we go for the heart. The heart. Their core nexus. It's the quantum communication hub that coordinates their entire empire. Destroy it, and their fleets can't coordinate. They'll be blind, deaf, and scattered across the galaxy. Haijin studied the map. The core nexus was located deep in Dominion space, protected by impossible defenses. We'll lose half the fleet just getting close. I know, Minho said. But if we succeed, we change everything. Meanwhile, Daeon was fighting a different kind of war. He traveled in secret to the homeworlds of species under Dominion control. His message was simple. Humanity discovered the truth about the Dominion, and were willing to share it. Most species were too afraid to listen. 12,000 years of conditioning was hard to break, but some listened. And of those who listened, a few were willing to act. The Kellyan were a peaceful species who had accepted Dominion. Protection 600 years earlier? They built ships, maintained stations, and asked no questions. But their ambassador, a bean, what you're asking is suicide, Velcor told Daeon.
Maybe?
Daeon replied. But is what you have now really life? Do your children even remember what it means to be Kellyan? Velcor didn't answer immediately. Then he said, when do we strike? 2 other species made similar commitments? It wasn't an alliance. Humanity didn't have time for treaties and negotiations. It was an understanding when humanity made its move. These species would rise up and create chaos. Yunji ran the intelligence network that made all of this possible. She coordinated spy cells across Dominion space, collecting information, passing messages, and occasionally arranging accidents for Dominion officials who got too close to the truth. We have a problem, she reported to Minho. The Dominion is moving forces toward the hidden colonies. Someone talked. Then we accelerate the timeline, Minho said. Is the fleet ready? Ready enough? Then we attack in 10 days. But they needed one more thing, the location of the core nexus. The Dominion kept that information secret, known only to the highest levels of command. That's where Kyung came in. Kyung had been captured during the fall of the outer colonies. The Dominion offered him a choice, work for them or die. He agreed to work, and for 2 years he provided intelligence on human resistance activities. The Dominion trusted him. They shouldn't have. Every piece of intelligence Kyung provided was carefully crafted by Yunji's network. Real enough to be believable, but never quite accurate enough to be useful. Meanwhile, Kyung rose through the ranks of Dominion intelligence, gaining access to more and more classified information. When he finally discovered the location of the core nexus, he transmitted the data in a coded message hidden inside routine reports. The Dominion never noticed. Got it, Youngji said, reviewing the transmission. The nexus is in the Trell system. Coordinates confirmed.
Oh.
Minho looked at the location and smiled grimly. That's the most heavily defended system in the Dominion. Perfect. Perfect. Haijin asked. We're going to lose most of our fleet.
Yes.
But if we succeed, the Dominion loses everything. The plan was finalized. Operation Retribution would be a simultaneous attack on 8 targets. 7 would be major Dominion strongholds, designed to draw away defenders. The 8th would be the core Nexus itself. Hygiene would lead the Nexus assault. She didn't ask for the assignment. Minho gave it to her because she was the best they had. Her crew would consist entirely of volunteers. Everyone who joined knew they probably weren't coming back. On the day before departure, Hygiene addressed her crew. 200 ships, 30,000 people. All of them had lost something to the Dominion. Many had lost everything. I won't lie to you, she said. Most of us are going to die tomorrow. The Dominion has weapons we can't match and defenses we probably can't break. But we're going anyway. You want to know why? She paused, looking at the faces around her. Young and old. Soldiers and civilians. People who had been farmers, teachers, artists, parents. Because some things matter more than living. Because 50 billion people are counting on us. Because if we don't strike now, humanity will spend the next 1,000 years as slaves or will be erased completely. We fight because fighting is all we have left. We fight because we're human, and humans don't quit. She took a breath. Tomorrow, we're going to hit the core Nexus with everything we have. We're going to make the Dominion remember that humanity existed. And maybe, just maybe, we'll survive to see what happens next. But survive or die, we'll do it as free people. That's more than the Dominion can say, crew cheered. It wasn't the sound of people celebrating. It was the sound of people accepting their fate and choosing to face it standing up. That night, Dayon came to see his sister. They sat in her quarters and drank coffee, not saying much. There wasn't much to say. They both knew what tomorrow would bring. Do you think Dad would be proud? Hyjin asked. Yes, Dayen said. He always said we should stand for something. I think dying to save humanity counts. Who said anything about dying? Hyjin smiled. I plan to make it back, just to prove the Dominion wrong. They talked until dawn. Then Hyjin walked to the bridge of the Indomitable and gave the order that would change the galaxy. All ships prepare for jump. Destination. Trell system. Operation Retribution begins now. 200 ships vanished into hyperspace, heading toward the most heavily defended system in the known galaxy. Behind them, resistance cells prepared to strike on every occupied world. Allied species readied their own rebellions, and in the darkness between stars, billions of humans waited to see if their gamble would pay off. The Dominion had ruled for 12,000 years. They thought they were invincible. They were about to learn otherwise, the Trell. The system was beautiful in the way that graves can be beautiful. 3 planets orbited a blue-white star. And hanging in orbit above the second planet was the core Nexus. It looked like a massive crystal flower. Each petal a communication array, connecting thousands of worlds. Hyjin's fleet emerged from hyperspace. Directly on top of it, the Dominion defenders didn't even have time to sound the alarm. Human ships opened fire immediately, targeting shield generators and weapons platforms. The carefully planned battle formations the Dominion expected never materialized. Instead, chaos erupted as 200 ships attacked from every direction at once.
Ow.
Focus fire on the outer arrays, Hyjin ordered. Clear a path for the insertion team. Hannah coordinated the attack from Tactical. Heg, named Velcor, remembered stories from before the Dominion came. Stories of independence and pride, our algorithms predicting Dominion movements before they happened. 2 years of fighting had taught humanity how the Dominion thought. They were efficient, logical, predictable. Humans were none of those things. A Dominion battleship moved to intercept. Human ships didn't try to fight it directly. Instead, they swarmed it like insects. Dozens of small vessels targeting individual systems. The battleship's shields held, but its weapons couldn't track fast enough to hit the darting attackers. Then 3 human ships rammed it simultaneously. Their fusion cores set to overload on impact. The explosion tore a hole in the Dominion line. Path is clear, Hannah reported. Insertion team, your go. Yuna's transport shot through the gap, heading for the Nexus station itself. Behind them, the battle raged. Human ships were dying, but they were taking Dominion vessels with them. The exchange rate was brutal: 3 human ships for every Dominion ship, but humanity had accepted that cost. The transport crashed into a docking bay, cutting through the door with shaped charges. Yuna's team poured out, weapons ready. Dominion security forces responded immediately. The fighting was vicious. Close quarters, no room for mistakes. Jiho had trained the team well. They moved like water, flowing around defenses, striking weak points, never staying in one place long enough to be trapped. Saiyajin, how long until you can access the system? Yuna asked, firing at a Dominion soldier. I need 10 minutes, Saiyajin replied, already working on the security terminal. His fingers flew across the controls, bypassing layers of encryption that should have been impossible to break. UF5, Yuna said, as another wave of defenders appeared in space. Haijin watched her fleet slowly die. They had started with 200 ships. 60 were gone already, but the Dominion was bleeding too. Their defense forces were designed to stop conventional attacks. They had no answer for suicide runs and kamikaze tactics. Captain, the Dominion is pulling reinforcements from Sector Defense, Hannah reported. 2 more fleets are on approach. How long? 20 minutes. Agent opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships we need to hold for 20 minutes. Give Yuna's team time to work. Fight like we've got nothing left to lose, because we don't. The ships responded by pushing harder. Damaged vessels used their last fuel to ram Dominion positions. Crews with disabled weapons used their ships as shields for others. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Inside the Nexus, Jiho was proving why the Dominion had wanted him dead. The security forces had barricaded themselves in the approaches to the core systems. Jiho studied the layout for 30 seconds, then started placing charges. Everyone back, he said calmly. The explosion brought down 3 levels of corridor. Dominion forces scrambled to respond, but by then, Yuna's team was already through. Heading deeper into the station, SEO Jun reached the central computer core and plugged in his equipment. The security was incredible. It would have taken months to break through normally. He didn't have months. He had minutes, so he didn't try to break in. Instead, he uploaded a virus he'd been crafting for 2 years. It was built from fragments of predecessor code found in the stolen archives, modified to target Dominion systems specifically. The virus didn't destroy the Nexus. It did something worse. It turned the Nexus into a transmitter that would broadcast to every world under Dominion control. I'm in, Siagan said. Beginning upload? How long? Yuna asked, firing at defenders pouring into the room. 3 minutes. Jiho set up a defensive position. Then we hold for 3 minutes. The fighting was desperate. The Dominion understood now what was happening and threw everything they had at the central core. Yuna's team fought like cornered animals, because that's exactly what they were. Jiho took a plasma bolt to the chest. He collapsed, his equipment clattering around him. Before dying, he triggered the last set of charges he'd placed, collapsing the approach corridor and buying the team precious seconds. Siagen didn't look up from his work. The upload was at 70%. 80%. The virus was spreading through the Nexus systems. Replicating, taking control. They're cutting through the door, Yuna reported. Her weapon running dry. Almost done, Siagen said. 95%. The door exploded inward. Dominion troops poured in. Yuna drew her sidearm and fired, knowing it was futile. 100%, Siagen said quietly. Activating broadcast. He pressed the final key. The core Nexus lit up like a sun, and across the galaxy. On every world under Dominion control, the truth began to broadcast. Every screen showed the files Yuna had stolen from the Fortress world. The Dominion's entire history of lies. The extinct species. The stolen technology. The 12,000 years of deception. Every atrocity, every manipulation, every secret was laid bare for the galaxy to see. On Earth, Borum's resistance cell watched the broadcast in a ruined building. The Dominion soldiers watched too, their weapons lowering in confusion. For the first time, subject species across the galaxy saw the truth about their protectors. The Kellyan rose first. On 17 worlds, they stopped working, stopped maintaining systems, stopped cooperating. Other species followed. The Dominion's empire began to fracture. In the Trell system, the Dominion reinforcements arrived. Hyjin had maybe 40 ships left. She should have retreated. Instead, she opened fire. All ships, full assault. Make them pay for every meter. The final battle was a slaughter. But it was a glorious slaughter. Human ships fought until their weapons melted, until their engines died. Until they had nothing left but the resolve to make the enemy hurt. Daeun watched from a hidden station light years away. He watched his sister's ship take hit after hit and keep fighting. He watched the Indomitable's shields fail, watched atmosphere vent into space, watched the ship break apart under sustained fire. "Hyjin," he whispered, but there was no answer. The Indomitable exploded in a flash of light that briefly outshone the star. 40 human ships had entered the Trell system. None left alive, but they had succeeded. The core nexus was destroyed. The broadcast had reached every corner of Dominion space. And in the chaos that followed, 3 species openly rebelled. Admiral Minho received the reports from his command ship. The operation had cost them everything, but it had worked. The Dominion's enforcement fleets were scattered, unable to coordinate. Subject species were rising up across 100 worlds. "What do we do now?" his second officer asked. "Now?" Minho smiled grimly. "Now we make them regret ever hearing the word human." 5 years later, Daeon stood on Earth again. The planet was being rebuilt. The Dominion still existed, but it had fractured into dozens of smaller powers. The galaxy was messy, chaotic, and free for the first time in 12,000 years. He walked through a memorial garden where names were carved in black stone. Millions of names. People who had died fighting. He found his sister's name and placed flowers beneath it. "We did it," he said quietly. "We won. Not the way we hoped, but we survived. And more than that, we changed everything." A young woman approached. Borum, now 22, walked with a slight limp from an old injury. She had survived the occupation and become a voice for the new humanity. "Ambassador Daeun," she said, "we're ready for the conference." Adayan nodded. Representatives from dozens of species were gathering to discuss the future. Former Dominion subjects learning to be sovereign powers again. It would be difficult. There would be conflicts. But it would be honest at the conference. A young alien asked Borum why humanity had fought. "You could have survived if you'd accepted the Dominion's terms. Why choose death?" Borum thought about her father dying on New Jeju, about Hyjin and the crew of the Indomitable, about Jiho and Yuna and millions of others who gave everything. "We didn't choose death," she said. "We chose freedom. The Dominion offered us a choice between chains and extinction. We rejected that choice and made our own. We chose to live free or die trying. That's not rejecting peace. That's rejecting the lie that peace and slavery are the same thing." She looked at the assembled delegates. Real peace can only exist between equals. What the Dominion offered wasn't peace. It was domination wearing a kind face. We fought because we understood that some things are worse than death. And living as slaves, forgetting what we were, losing everything that made us human, that was worse than any death could be. Another delegate spoke up. "But at what cost?" "Billions died," as Borum said. "And they died free. They died as humans, not as broken things pretending to be alive. We don't celebrate their deaths. We mourn them every day. But we honor them by staying free, by making sure their sacrifice meant something." Yonji, now a senior intelligence officer, added, "The Dominion told the galaxy that they maintained peace for 12,000 years. But it wasn't peace. It was stagnation. It was death disguised as protection. They killed any species that showed potential. They crushed any civilization that tried to grow. We exposed that lie. Yes, it cost us dearly. but now the galaxy has a chance to actually be free. The conference continued for weeks. It wasn't easy. Species that had forgotten how to be independent needed to relearn. Conflicts arose. But they were honest conflicts between free peoples, not the false harmony of slaves who had forgotten they could resist. In the memorial garden, a new inscription was being carved. It read, "They rejected a false peace to give us a real future. May we prove worthy of their sacrifice." Dayon stood before it as the sun set over Earth. Ji-Wan approached, now the head of predecessor technology research. Their work had advanced humanity decades in just 5 years. "The Dominion was right to fear us," she said. "Not because we're violent, but because we refuse to stop growing. They wanted to freeze the galaxy in place. We proved that was impossible. Do you think it was worth it?" Dayon asked. Ji-Wan was quiet for a moment. "My parents died on New Jeju. I watched friends die in the war. If you ask me personally, I want to say no. But if you ask me as a human, as someone looking at what we built from the ashes, yes, it was worth it. We're free. The galaxy is free. That matters." As darkness fell, lights came on across the rebuilt cities. Children played in streets that had been battlegrounds. People laughed, loved, lived. They were building something new, something honest, something real. The Dominion had offered humanity a choice: kneel or die. Humanity rejected both options and made their own choice. They chose to fight. They chose to bleed. They chose to sacrifice everything for the chance to remain free. It wasn't a rejection of peace. It was a rejection of the lie that submission could ever be called peace. True peace, they proved, could only be built on freedom, dignity, and the right of all species to determine their own fate. The galaxy would never forget the moment humanity refused to kneel. And in that refusal, in that stubborn insistence on remaining free, they gave the galaxy something it hadn't had in 12,000 years: hope.